and so on, but they do exist. And I don't know if any of you have read the full Cunliffe interim report, but it does make, it is very long, but it does make a couple of sort of pleasing references to Cabra. I think I wouldn't want to over-egg it, but it talks about a stronger regional water system that should be clearly connected to the local voice and draw on local catchment-based partnerships. And then mentions again now such partnerships that now exist and receive DEFRA support to allow for a stronger local voice and local engagement. And this one, very important benefit of regional arrangements is to link strongly to local catchment-based partnerships, connection of planning, decisions to place and engender a greater sense of ownership and greater accountability. So it all sounds good, but I guess the next question is, well, what comes out of the final report that's due soon, and how does government react to that in terms of CABA and well, other issues too, but how might funding change? And I don't know if Claire wants to comment later, but I think I don't know enough to, it's kind of a wait and see holding pattern really, but at least the report has sort of flagged the importance of CABA. I guess that's the good news. So on to the catchment plans and story maps. I think each host of each CABA partnership has been required to produce a plan now through their signed agreement with the agency. But I think more importantly than that, it's actually, a good looking plan really sort of builds confidence in the partnership and really captures the future direction of travel. And there's some really nice examples actually. I meant to put the link on the CABA to the CABA website of where all the plans are. And as I said before, they do vary in quality. I think there's no point pretending otherwise. The worst of them are probably sort of pins on a map. The best of them are really comprehensive, and a greater mass somewhere in between. But there are, this year actually, we've seen several have been, they should be dynamic really. So they should, revisit them fairly regularly. And several have had quite good updates, I think, over the last year or so. So, and they come in different forms. There's sort of PDF, story maps, and so on. And I'll go on to those points in a bit. Just to say, a few years ago, we did produce, and you can still find this on the CABA website, quite a bit of guidance around producing a plan, and CABA more generally, very much focused on data and evidence, particularly in the early days of CABA. We were really focused on getting partnerships, gathering as much data and evidence and bringing some scientific rigor to what they do. And I think that was all very much needed. But about 18 months ago, I think it was, we've updated the guidance. I've put the link at the top of the slide there with what I don't know quite how to describe it exactly, but kind of some softer elements that were kind of missing, like marketing yourself as a partnership, engagement, hooks into other land and water policy, not throwing away the importance to keep focused on the data and evidence. That's not changed, but there's some other elements we felt were missing. So that's been updated, and you can find that guidance there via that link. So this is the old guidance really. It took the CABA snake really, and it was focused upon 5 stages, building your partnership. That was kind of the early days of CABA. Using data and evidence, as I mentioned, to develop a catchment plan, using the plan to implement delivery on the ground, measuring outcomes, adjusting delivery, and going back, looking at the plan, trying to improve it, monitoring evaluation, and so on. So that's the existing one, and that's still a good model. But what we've done in that more recent guidance is to add a few elements that were missing, we felt. And there's several of these in the coming few slides. So one of these is to kind of, as a partnership, to market yourselves. And this is an interesting one, because I think most people on this call, certainly myself included, are perhaps somewhat technical in their background, something to do with water or land management or some other related theme. None of us probably feel particularly confident or familiar with really overtly marketing out what we do. But I do think some of the plans could do with a bit more gentle, understated bullishness of sort of saying, we're here, we've got some expertise, whether that be in the urban environment or rural or whatever it might be. and actually just selling yourselves a little bit more without being too overt about it. I think, there's no harm in saying, we are the Catchment Partnership. We are the people to come to, and pointing out, perhaps your diversity and your community reach and so on. But yeah, I think just being a bit more bullish around saying what your expertise is. And then also, I mean, of course, the plan should be about action and delivery, but there are partnerships who say, actually, for the 15K a year we get, or 7.5K even, we can't expect to do too much delivery. We see our role as being a convener, bringing key people together and being a catalyst for action. And I think that's fine. I find myself between a rock and a hard place often with Cabot, trying to want more for partnerships, but knowing that, core funding is pretty limited. But I think it's, if you see yourself as, and I suppose most partnerships do really, most of them have that role as a convener and trying to get action on the ground, even if others are doing that action, that's something worth flagging. As is a track record of delivery. I've seen there are some plans out there that are kind of a whole slightly turgid list of past projects in a PDF. I'd suggest that's not the way to do it. In your plan, I think it's good to select case studies that show your expertise. 3 of them, perhaps 5 of them. I mean, I don't want to be too formulaic ever, but cherry pick some better case studies and bring them to life rather than whole long lists of names of project that there are too many of them and it's hard to sort of get your teeth into them. And then provide a vision for your catchment. I think that's really important. If you don't have one, who will? So, and be positive in tone, inspire and motivate others to engage with the partnership and support the achievement of that vision. I'll come on to this point a bit more in a moment. And then, of course, the plans should be underpinned by action, really. What needs to be done to realize your vision? What are the main environmental challenges? How do you address them, prioritize them, and so on? Who do you need to bring along with you to realize your vision? And another suggestion here, again, I don't think things need to be set in stone, but perhaps a tiered approach to capturing your action as a partnership. So a little bit on what, cherry picking a few nice examples of what you have done, but what's in the pipeline, what's imminent, what work's about to be or is committed, or for the want of 10 or 20K will be going ahead. And then perhaps what's feasible for the want of some, a bit more funding, sort of something under $250,000. What could you do? What would be next on your list? And then maybe something more aspirational. I was rung up about 18 months ago now by someone representing a Dutch bank who has said they had millions of euros to spend on carbon, basically. And I've never been rung up in that way before. It's quite an interesting conversation. But literally, this bank was wanting to commit millions of euros into catchment delivery. As it happened, I think it all went on tree planting. But those sums of money aren't unusual nowadays. Big chunks of money, 1 million or more. So there's no harm in being, even if it's just short and succinct, be aspirational in your plan. Here's where we could be if we suddenly, won big. And then I think it's worth, it's not worth, it's really important to quantify environmental benefits of your delivery. I think most partnerships are pretty good at that, although perhaps sometimes it strays into being a little bit qualitative. So keep it quantitative as far as possible. But I think here the other thing is to try and bring in the social and economic benefits of what you do too, if you can. This is not necessarily easy, I get that, but particularly economic stuff. But, there are ways. For example, a lot of partnerships engage with farmers on, more sustainable management of their land, of soil, nutrients, pesticides, and so on. And there's, often that work is a win-win. There are improvements to the farm business arising from that. Things are being used more sustainably, but also the aquatic environment wins, or terrestrials, it could be soil health. So, there are economic benefits from a lot of work that you'll do. And then there are the social elements, health and well-being benefits of green, blue infrastructure, urban wetlands, and so on. So even if you can't capture it really rigorously, try and capture it somehow, I think, it obviously the environmental stuff, but the social and economic benefits too. a kind of challenging one. Who's the plan targeted at? In a way, I think the answer is everyone. Water is a social issue. You know, everyone's impacted by and impacts water. Uh, so again, I wouldn't want to be too formulaic, but think about how you want to structure it and who you want to target. You know, local communities to local authorities if they're not already in your partnership, to private investors and so on. It's not an easy one, that actually, I think, but worth thinking through how you target it. And then the other thing, I think, without going overboard here, I think it's really useful to sort of understand and link in or include some hooks into the current land and water policy and legislation landscape. There's an awful lot there. Local nature recovery strategies. I mean, I'd see CABRA as a watery arm of that. Flood risk plans, local authority plans, drainage wastewater management plans. There's so much out there, ELMS. But you know, show that you understand that landscape and that you overlap with it, I think is the message. Yeah, just going back to the vision, I think it is important because I think a good vision, it does build trust, and well, you can't produce one without being quite collaborative. And a good one reflects that collective imagination across all your partners, can inspire others to come along with you, and I think also builds confidence in your partnership as a delivery partner, actually. Again, I think nothing formulaic here. Here's one from the Eden. This is a very long plan, but a good one, where they've gone for sort of the senses, really. They see an enhanced living landscape, hear more bird song, feel safe from flooding, live in thriving communities and so on. Doesn't have to be that. It could be quite a hard-nosed quantitative vision, I think, but just some examples. In that guidance I mentioned, I linked to, there are some examples of selected plans and story maps and so on you might want to look at. And then going back to, don't lose sight of using the data and evidence to underpin your plan. Scientific rigor obviously counts. And here's where the CABRA data package can help. It's not the only data source, but there's an awful lot in there. There's over 200 data layers now. And a lot of you have access to, or you do use, sort of various tools and predictive models and so on to quantify outcomes and benefits or pressures impacting and impacts. So all of that, I think, helps, quantify and bring some rigor. Things like SciMap, road runoff tool, plenty of other models besides. So, don't be afraid of capturing those or showing that you've used them. And then another point here, which I think is not more controversial, but I think, each partnership or each individual in the partnership might feel differently about this. Capturing private investors and maybe blended finance and so on. So if you want to do it, some people feel this is greenwashing. My personal view is, if it comes with rigor around the outcomes, clear environmental outcomes, I don't feel that's the case. But clearly, each case is unique. But if you're keen on doing that, then you've got to talk the right language. What's in it for a private investor? How and where might they invest? What might the outcomes be? So something else to chew over. And then I think, emphasize most partnerships are pretty good. I mean, I think overall, CABRA as a whole, maybe the one great thing it does above all else is that building of social capital. There's so much going on in terms of volunteering and provision of opportunities for citizen science that's increasingly, really counting now. So I think, emphasize that you've got links into local community and you offer these sorts of possibilities, and make sure you can explain in your plan how others can get involved and bring people along with you. Just a word on story maps, because I think over the years we've got kind of a mixed bag, really. I think those partnerships that have found enough resource have got a good plan and a good story map. Others have got one or other, or have done a sort of funny mixture. There's no one perfect way. I think this is where money counts. I think if all partnerships had really, much more funding over the years, I could be much more bullish about saying we'll do it this way. But I recognise money is tight, so it's hard. But I do like story maps. I think they obviously provide, the whole point is they provide a nice visual snapshot and a succinct narrative of your catchment, its challenges and the solutions. And I think I like that. It's well written. It can be really quite digestible to non-experts and so on. Draw people in. I suppose the question is, can a story map also be a plan? And I think yes, but you've got to be mindful that a few nice photos don't equate to a plan. You've got to include some of these key elements, I think. So that's why I say if resources allow, you could consider both a standalone plan, but also a story map and link the two together. But you can embed a decent plan within a story map. Just depends on resources. So a few examples here. I just quite like this one. This is the test and itching, just the chalk stream, immediately visually appealing, makes you want to sort of go in and have a look at the catchment and what they're up to. This one I think actually is something of a plan within a story map. So you've got various action that's going on in the partnership. So that's quite good to see. Quite an action-filled photo as well. And then this point to think about, wider engagement and empowerment for all. So there's, under this monitoring and research tab, a data and evidence hub where, anyone can kind of upload data, which I think is quite a powerful thing to do, actually. It needs obviously some rigor around it, but that really is quite a powerful thing, I think. And yes, there are plenty of examples, actually. No, not plenty. There are a few examples of story maps where I think they have successfully embedded an action plan within one. But again, I'm reticent to be sort of formulaic here. I think good plans can come in lots of different forms. It's more about capturing 3, 4, 5, 6 key elements than actually being too formulaic about how they look. Yeah, actually, just going back. So why does it all matter? I think there's a sense of empowerment, of rigor behind your partnership, of others having confidence in what you do, seeing you as the key deliverers across a whole range of different issues. And I think what's interesting now also is with the Cunliffe Review and how government might react to that is we can see, I hear noises in DEFRA on this around pushing towards catchment plans more and more. What that means is lots of question marks. So do you have an overarching plan for a catchment that simply links to a CABA plan and a water industry WINET plan and a flood plan? I don't know. Or do you start afresh and create a whole new truly integrated plan? I guess that's probably less likely, but it could happen. So I don't know the way ahead how this will play out actually over the coming year or two, but I think there's no doubt. I think if your partnership has a good, strong catchment plan, it just puts you in a good position. I think there's no doubt about that. If you're a funder, I've always say this: if you're a funder, who are you going to fund? A partnership that has a really strong, visually appealing plan that really knows where it wants to go, or one with a few pins on a map? That's kind of what it comes down to, I think. And I shall stop there. You're on mute again, Sarah, I think.
I'm just really good at muting myself, aren't I? Thank you very much. Just wanted to ask if anyone has any questions for Rob? Anything you've picked up on that you wanted him to expand on, perhaps? Or you'd like to share, not necessarily a story, but a particular issue that you want to bring to the table? Will?
Yeah, I think it'd be good to ask just how we get these plans in front of a wider audience as well, because I think you can have really good plans, but they don't necessarily get seen by the right people, or they get, yeah, I know they kind of sit on our website and we can point people to them and talk about them, but the people we want seeing them, which I suppose the government decision makers and the funders, don't seem to always kind of respond. Well, maybe see them is the key.
It's a good point, Will. I think one thing that's been, I didn't mention this earlier, one thing that's been really good in the last 2 or 3 years is just how engaged the DEFRA water quality team are in CABA. And they ask clever questions of us and others now, and they are keen to go out on the road. I appreciate that probably means they probably can't get to 106 different catchments, but I wonder if they have been on the road. They've been to the Irwell, for example. They've been up to the Weir partnerships. They've been to the Eden for the launch of that plan I mentioned. But so I wonder if there isn't something you could do as a Thames collective and showcase, plans and more for all the partnerships in the Thames. I don't know. I'm just sort of thinking off the top of my head, but I think the good news is they're much more in listening mode and wanting to understand. So I think, well, they used not to travel outside London, but they do these days. But you're not bad placed geographically. So I think it could be worth thinking about, a CABA celebration day almost around all the partnerships. That could be worth pondering and using that to sell the plans, but actually all aspects of, delivery on the ground, collaboration, all of it.
Yeah, or even having them along to a Thames Catchment Forum and just focusing all the presentations on kind of showing off what everyone's doing.
Yeah, definitely. They come now to the CABA National Support Group, and I think they'd be definitely up for that. If you gave them enough notice, I think you'd definitely get attendance there.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Well noted, thank you. Happy.
Hello. I had a question about whether you have come across catchment partnerships, or if anyone here is using a flagship approach to kind of focus attention on specific sub-catchments within the catchment partnership. It's something that's being done by the Severn Catchment Partnership, which is my neighbour to the west. So obviously not Thames area, but it's kind of half of Gloucestershire and I'm the other half of Gloucestershire. Whether there's any form for that kind of working really well within the Thames area. And maybe I should explain a bit more what I mean by the flagships. Would that be useful?
Yeah,
anyway.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So the way that they're doing it is effectively branding or packaging a collection of projects within a sub-catchment area. So the Stroud Rivers in Gloucestershire is a good example. They packaged it as Wilder Froome. They've got multiple projects going on there, but rather than kind of just calling it part of the broader catchment partnership, they've branded it specifically as Wilder Froome in order to give that a bit more of a kind of localized identity and make it easier to kind of sell themselves to funders who are perhaps more willing to fund a specific project within that flagship area, because they can see that it's part of a bigger picture in the flagship area, as opposed to an even bigger picture in a much larger catchment area.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, others might have a view on this. I think it's a good idea with one caveat, because it goes to what I was saying earlier about actually cherry picking your best examples. Because the counter to that, and it's got an extreme example, I have seen plans where you can click on a link, or even embedded in the plan, where your eyelids get heavy just reading a whole list of projects, and you think, well, what does that mean? What does that, like, you can read the title of a project, but it's not really bringing something to life. It's not telling you about who was involved in the one, great collaboration involving 8 partners or whatever it was, or the outcome. So I think I like that idea. I suppose the only danger is if it takes too much of an identity of its own and away from the partnership. So I suppose it's just a word of warning to be careful about. It's under the partnership, and yes, okay, you can have its own name or whatever, but just make sure it still keeps that link to the partnership.
Do you know of anyone doing that in the Thames area though? Or doing it particularly well, perhaps? That would be useful as a kind of case study for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I've looked at so many plans. It's hard I have seen plans that have broken down by sub-catchment, but that's not quite the same thing. Yeah, I'll have a dig around, but actually others on the call might know as much as me, if not more. So yeah.
Thanks.
So yeah, it'll be good if you can share it with us, Rob, after the meeting if you think of something or find a particular partnership. I think Caroline has a question or two, followed by Becca. So we'll start with Caroline.
No, not me.
Sorry,
me?
Caroline. No, Charlotte, sorry.
That's okay. I was just going to say, we kind of linked to the flagship thing. We are the Pang is a flagship chalk stream catchment, which is slightly different. But so we're part of the South Chilterns Catchment Partnership. And I think one of the challenges the South Chilterns Catchment Partnership has had is we've got this kind of really weird identity that it isn't, nobody really identifies with the South Chilterns. They identify with the Wallingford Brooks or the Thames or the Pang. And so that having the flagship has been kind of quite transformational in getting local buy-in, because we're talking about a scale that people can relate to. But it does raise that conflict. We don't say this is the Pang flagship project. We're part of the South Chilterns Catchment Partnership every time we introduce it. So that balance between keeping the catchment identity of the catchment partnership and the project identity is a little bit challenging, I think. But certainly we found it's much easier to get people to engage on a scale that they can relate to, where the names of the places they understand and they care about.
That's a great point. Thank you. Becca?
Yeah, I was just going to say, similar to Charlotte, we've got the Ching and the London Lee catchment is kind of our, I wouldn't say flagship, it is kind of a sub-catchment plan, but it's one of the first ones we've created in the Lee, and it's really, we did a whole press release around the plan, and it's kind of picked up a lot of momentum, and then there's a lot of people signed up to be part of the Ching Action Group, and it's kind of the example of what we want to do across the rest of the catchment. So yeah, it's not necessarily a flagship, but it is kind of being promoted as a bit of a flagship for the catchment. So yeah, the plan is to do that across the rest of the catchment as well, whilst kind of emphasising that it's a sub-catchment plan as part of the wider catchment. But yeah, it helps people get to grips with it a bit better than the whole London League, because no one kind of knows where that is and what it covers.
So the bottom line is, as long as there's familiarity, it's easier for people to catch on, right? When you call on a particular stretch or a location that they know, and then it's easy for them to just buy into it, as opposed to a place they don't know about. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. And I think just as I said, at a national level, we often take a case study from a partnership to use that to show that CABA is very good at X, whether that's an urban wetlands, and say, look, you know, there are 6 partners involved and 4 different funders. It's not quite the same thing, but I think it just, part of it is the same thing. It's about sort of showing just what CABA can do, and sometimes a case study at a particular location works better than this partnership's good type thing.
Lovely. Yeah, does anyone else have any more questions or anything they wish to share? Just to add, Zara, Will's point about if you do want to run an event and get DEFRA along, let me know, because I've sort of worked with the sort of key DEFRA water quality folk, or invite them to they're on the CABA National Support Group, so I can easily introduce you to them or pass on an invite and you take it from there. So yeah. Sounds great.
Sorry, I realise there's other people waiting, but what kind of event do you think would be suitable to invite them to?
Well, that's a good question, because you could go out in the field, but then that limits you to how many things they can see in any one day. So I think years ago we went to DEFRA in, what was their Noble House. We ran this, what do they call it, a celebration of CABA Day, and we had sort of basically trestle tables around the inner workings of DEFRA, and the permanent secretary at the time was really good. She got everyone she forced everyone from DEFRA to come along, and we just showcased different things. We had like an urban table, working with water industry, rural engagement, and showcased a whole load of different citizen science. And what it did was to show how CABA integrated across DEFRA. So it wasn't just about floods, it wasn't just about water quality, it wasn't just about biodiversity. So there's that element. So you could hold an event somewhere like, I don't know, Barnes Wetland Centre or something, or I'm just thinking aloud. So something that was, yeah, kind of just showcasing yourselves actually unashamedly in a way, different elements of what you all do across the Thames. And I think they'd be up for that. Hire a venue, I think. Be the
He
way
has
to
an
do it.
event coming up, I think. I think she's got a walkabout coming up soon.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
I could invite DEFRA, sure. What I've suggested in the chat, though, it sounds like what Rob's referring to that happened previously would be a really good idea to do again together. Like we can collaborate on doing, because I mean, I used to work for DEFRA. The average tenure in the civil service in any particular role is 1.5 years. So the institutional memory is abysmal, and it's a high chance that 95% of the people would be different if we did it again now.
It's a very good point. And also it's a question of, sorry, I'm jumping in here, a question of timing as well, that maybe over the coming months isn't bad timing at all, as the government ponders what comes out of Cunliffe and other things as well, that it wouldn't be a bad idea. And you might well get a minister coming along, who knows?
Yeah, there's quite a lot coming out at the minute, you know, with changes to BNG and catchment planning more broadly.
Yeah, the Corrie review as well. Yeah, I think if you think big and invite the minister or ministers, you know, go for it, I reckon. Because I mean, across the lot of you, 27 partnerships in the Thames, something like that. You know, it covers everything. It covers the best of CABA, really. Someone was from there was mention of the coastal partnerships earlier as well. I think, you know, that's a good important element as well.
Thank you. I'm well aware that we're running over, but I'm also glad we are, because this means it's very engaging. I think Will has a question as well. Perhaps we'll just end on that. And Caroline, I'll read your comments straight after.
I was just going to say, we kind of had a similar thing to what we've been talking about back in 2023. I think we had that 10 years of CABA event, which was really, really good. And I think a really positive way of advertising all the work of catchment partnerships. But that obviously, I think as Beatrix was saying, that was under previous government. There's probably been huge turnover since then. I feel like it'd be quite good to nudge this new government. And as Rob was saying, with the timing of it, that we're still here, we're still doing this work. And I think at that 10 years of CABA event, that was where they promised an uplift in funding for us. And then obviously the election was called and none of that happened. Just kind of backing up what's already been said, but it would be nice to give them a nudge.
Yeah, and you might, I mean, we can do another sort of national thing. That was kind of meant to be a national thing, but if you stuck it to Thames, you could probably move a bit more swiftly and
agreed,
a bit more smoothly. It's just a national thing. We have to go through, you know, make sure the CABA is represented nationwide, which is a good thing to do, of course, but you can just move more quickly and efficiently, I reckon.
Okay. I think we'll just end on Caroline's point. Caroline, would you like to read it out?
Sure. So I was just, you know, there's a lot going on at the moment with the London surface water strategy, and I just wanted to get a sense of how CABA is going to be interacting with that and the development of that surface water catchment partnership approach.
Yeah, that mostly comes through the CABA Urban Working Group. I don't know if anyone on the call sits on that. So Peter Bide is the chair of that, and that group actually wrote the early days of this not so new government, wrote a really nice sort of punchy letter to government saying, here's where we need to go with all of this. And the response has been a bit disappointing, I think, from the minister. You know, Schedule 3 and so on not being implemented yet. And it's all been, growth agenda seems to have kind of dominated. So that group does what it can. And I think, yeah, it's something that's ongoing, I think. And I think the river partnerships in London specifically, which I guess some of you are part of that. There seems to be quite a lot of action. I copied into the emails on that at the moment. But I mean, more broadly, actually, we are, and over the years have done a lot to try and engage local authorities and champion, partnership working with them. And it where it works, there's some great examples. It's just we're still in that position of this a few nice piecemeal examples around the country rather than it being a step change towards something really significant everywhere. Well, that's something those points were made in the CABA submission to Cunliffe.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we're okay now in terms of the questions. I just wanted to say that I forgot to mention earlier that we are going to share the slides, the materials used at this meeting in the TRT website and the Lunch and Learn page. And I'll let everyone know as soon as we've done that. Thank you so much, Rob. That was a fantastic session. I've got some key takeaways as well, highlighting the importance of aligning your story map to the catchment planning, ensuring that when we put our plans together, we always keep in mind the audience that are reading it, identify who your audiences are, and that would help define the objective behind your catchment plan and story mapping. So I always try and remind myself to try and step away from too much detail and think about the people looking in from outward, So that is the great takeaway for me from this session. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you picked up some stuff, and we'll see you soon next week. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you. Bye.